Now I know many of you might not know this, but I'm a huge Pokemon fan, and with the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it inspired me to make a video about Pokemon. Now I know this isn't my regular type of content, but I don't care cause I'm doing it anyways. But enough about me, you read the title, you know what we're talking about, Pokemon. Love it or hate it, doesn't matter, cause it will still be the top earning multimedia franchise on the planet, surpassing things like Hello Kitty and Disney just to name a few. And of course a company can be this big without having an impact on one of the easiest consumers in the world, kids. And I was no exception. As a kid, I had a very different experience growing up with Pokemon from most kids. While most kids grew up playing the Pokemon games, collecting Pokemon cards, and watching the anime, I grew up watching the anime. Just the anime. That's right, my love of Pokemon as a kid was only restricted to the Pokemon anime, mostly due to the fact that I didn't even know the Pokemon games and TCG existed back then. It was 2017. I was bored one day and had the urge of playing an RPG, so I typed into Google popular RPGs and Pokemon came out. So I downloaded the first Pokemon game that showed up, and it was a ROMhack. If you don't know what a ROMhack is, it's basically just a fan-made Pokemon game, and I loved these back then. I played Pokemon Glaze, Moon Emerald, Pokemon but all the Pokemon are hot ladies, and recently I played the best Pokemon ROMhack ever, Pokemon Unbound. That game is sick by the way. But it wouldn't be long until I found out that Pokemon had their own official games. I played them and I loved all of them. Well, some of them, well, a few of them, well, a handful of them. Released way before I was even born, Pokemon Red, Blue and later Yellow started the Pokemon craze in the early to late 90s, only for me to play them for the very first time in 2020. I remember playing Pokemon Yellow the most and aiming to complete the Pokédex, a task that to this day I have never been able to accomplish. Personally, I don't feel too strongly about these games because I played Fire Red before them, but as a start to Pokemon as a whole,
that's pretty good.
These games did big numbers on their release, and a sequel was definitely on its way. Pokemon Silver and Gold, games that were miracles. Being able to fit 2 whole regions into a single cartridge was insane at the time. Being completely honest here, I've never been able to complete the Gen 2 games. In fact, I'd even say it's one of my least favorite Pokemon games. Not saying that these are bad games, just saying that they're not for me. And because I never finished them, I don't really have a lot to say about them. After Pokemon Silver and Gold, Pokemon moved from being on the brick Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, meaning more power to make something 10 times more impressive, and boy did they over-deliver. Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red and Leaf Green are to this day one of my favorite Pokemon games. Pokemon Emerald was my first ever non-fan-made Pokemon game, and I played it to death. The music, great. The Pokemon, great. The story, immaculate. And that's just half the story, cause I also adore the loving hell of Pokemon Red. It's my comfort Pokemon game. I don't even know how many times I've replayed Fire Red. And every time I play it, it's still as fun as the last. With its beautiful sprites, the epic music, and the brilliant post-game, this game is just so good, man. I would definitely recommend this to someone who wants to get into Pokemon. These were the only games we had on the Game Boy Advance, because soon after that Nintendo would kill off the Game Boy Advance, replacing it with the Nintendo DS, which housed Pokemon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, one of the most beloved iconic Pokemon games. Many love it for its characters, Pokemon, and its story. It added so much to the game of Pokemon, and was the first Pokemon game on the DS, which meant better graphics and better performance. At the time, this was the ultimate Pokemon game, and being totally honest here, I could never get into these games. Like, I remember opening up Pokemon Platinum, playing it, getting to the first gym, and dropping it. I know, I suck. To this day, I haven't been able to finish or play any of the Gen 4 games. I don't know what it is about these games, but I just can't get into them. Even though they have my favorite characters and my favorite Pokemon, I just can't get into them. Maybe it's cause they're on the DS, because everything I said here goes the same for Pokemon Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black and White, and its sequel. Not saying again that these are bad games, just saying that they're probably not my cup of tea. The last official Pokemon game I played as of recording is Pokemon Ultra Moon. This is a game not many like because it is bogged, and I mean bogged, with a lot of cutscenes. I think a certain Wolfman said it best.
Being practically the same story retold with different characters, they've somehow gotten more and more convoluted, resulting in walls of text that you have to mash A through for minutes. Sun and Moon were especially guilty of this, where the game was kind of just a glorified cutscene.
Simply put, it was slow, it was tedious at times, it was unbalanced as all hell, and so many people didn't like this game. But this is my favorite Pokemon game of all time. Now, before all the Pokemon fans all unsubscribe and roast me on twitter.com/devdoesalot, being real here, when I played Pokemon Ultra Moon for the first time, I had never had so much fun in a Pokemon game. It was my first ever 3D Pokemon game, and it just looks so good. You gotta remember that I was so used to this type of Pokemon. Moving from GBA to this was such a big deal to me at the time. Like, I loved the cutscenes because it made the journey I was going on feel way more grand. And the music in this game is so good and relaxing. The new Pokemon are so fun, like, look at this! You can't make this shit up! And the story was so intriguing to me. Bonding with my Pokemon never felt so real. I, like most people, struggled on Ultra Necrozma. All you need to know about it is that it's a very unfair battle, it has better stats, a higher level, and incredible coverage. And the only way I beat it is because of the happiness meter. You see, as you go on your journey, Pokemon you catch have a happiness meter. You can increase it to its max by various means. I remember taking a lot of pictures with my Pokemon and feeding my Pokemon until they look like your typical American. The reward for maxing out the happiness meter is that Pokemon on full happiness will perform better just to impress you. My Pokemon in particular tanked multiple attacks on 1 HP so we could beat Ultra Necrozma. And when I finally beat the game, I actually lost my save file, and I actually teared up because I had never felt so attached to a Pokemon team before that. And for that reason, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon are my favorite games. I find it kind of funny how I'm such a Pokemon fan, but I've only completed 3 games. I don't have a Switch, so I haven't played Pokemon Sword, Shield, Scarlet, Violet, and Legends Arceus, and I've only played 1 hour of Pokemon X. But I do one day plan on finishing all the mainline Pokemon games. But in all honesty, I might not be able to do that because my electricity is barely up. And if you want to know why, then you gotta click the video on screen. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Scram!